In this lecture, we shall be continuing with our discussion on the kinds of companies which can be formed under the company law. I shall be taking up the sixth part of this topic in this lecture. In this part 6 lecture on the kinds of company, we shall be continuing our discussion on the companies which fall under the head of other companies. Under this head, the three remaining companies which we shall be discussing are Nidhi Company, Ratna Companies and Variable Capital Company. These three companies, which will be a subject matter of our today's discussion, have been highlighted in red for your reference. The other four kinds of companies under this head of other companies, namely a company with charitable objects, a dormant company, an investment company, and producer company, they were taken up in the previous part 5 lecture. So in our discussion on the three remaining kinds of companies, we would be examining their concepts, features, structure, and points of differentiation, if any, along with the provisions governing them under the relevant law. So first we shall be taking up a Nidhi Company. The legal framework governing a Nidhi Company is provided in Chapter 26 of the Companies Act 2013 and the Nidhi Company Rules of 2014. A Nidhi Company is defined under Section 406, Clause 1 of the Companies Act 2013. According to this provision, a Nidhi, which is also called a mutual benefit society, it means a company which the central government may, by notification in the official gazette, declare to be a Nidhi or mutual benefit society, as the case may be. So, as you would have noticed, this is a technically worded definition which does not reveal much about the concept, features, and characteristics of a Nidhi company. So, what is a Nidhi company? The word Nidhi is derived from Hindi language, signifying treasure. A Nidhi company is a company that primarily deals with managing deposits from and providing loans to its members. These members are also called as its shareholders. The principal source of funds of a Nidhi company is the contribution from its members. The members enjoy benefits such as provision of loans at relatively reasonable rates. A Nidhi company serves several important purposes such as to promote savings amongst its members, to render financial assistance to its members by accepting deposits from them and providing them loans. It aims to inculcate a culture of financial discipline among its members. It also aims to strengthen financial stability within the community of its members. Lastly, it aims to foster a culture of mutual help, cooperation, and support amongst its members. Now, the Nidhi companies are unique in the sense that they can accept deposits exclusively from their members and also offer loans exclusively to their members, which makes them a kind of a mutual benefit society. This principle of mutuality reduces the financial risks and ensures a sense of security within the community. The nature and functions of a Nidhi company are partly similar to those of banks. However, a caveat here is that Nidhi companies are not banks in the legal sense of the term, but are categorized as non-banking financial companies or NBFC. A non-banking financial company is a financial institution that provides limited banking services but does not hold a full banking license and therefore cannot accept deposits from the public like traditional commercial banks. Nidhi companies, as they are not banks in the legal sense of the term, therefore are not bound by the Reserve Bank of India guidelines. This allows them to set their own operational rules and regulations. So, in that sense, Nidhi companies enjoy a greater degree of autonomy than some of the other institutions that are subject to the RBI guidelines. However, the RBI does hold a limited authority over such institutions, which includes the power to issue directives regarding their deposit acceptance activities. Nidhi companies in India have specific exemptions and relaxed regulations when it comes to their annual compliance requirements and tax assessments. The structure of Nidhi companies is like a public limited company, and they must have the words Nidhi Limited added to their name. This is just to differentiate their character with some of the other companies that we have discussed, like public companies, private companies, one person company, so on and so forth. An example of Nidhi company is Saraswat Nidhi Limited, Matrubhumi Nidhi Limited. These kind of companies are mainly popular in southern part of India, especially in the state of Tamil Nadu. Now moving on to the second kind of a company in today's discussion is Ratna companies. Now the word Ratna literally means jewel. It is used in the context of public sector undertakings. They are usually statutory companies or government companies as defined under Section 2, Subclause 45 of the Companies Act 2013. Ratna refers to a layered or a tiered system of classification of public sector units based on their performance and financial strength. The highest tier is Ratna, followed by Navratna, and further followed by Mini Ratna. So these are the three tiers. Strictly speaking, Ratna is not a legal concept, but rather a classification of public sector units based on their performance and financial health. The status of Maharatna, Navratna, or Mini Ratna is granted by the Government of India. Now, first, we will take the top tier company, that is a Maharatna company. The Maharatna status is granted to the best performing and most financially robust PSUs. The Maharatnas enjoy the highest degree of autonomy in their operations and workings. An example of a Maharatna company is Oil and Natural Gas Corporation, popularly known as ONGC. The middle tier we have is Navratna. The Navratna status is granted to PSUs that are recognized for their good performance and financial stability. They are below the Maharatna level. Navratnas enjoy a high degree of autonomy in operations but lower as compared to Maharatna companies. An example of Navratna company is Mahanagar Telecom Nigam Limited, popularly known as MTNL, and National Aluminium Company Limited, NALCO. Moving on to the last tier, that is Mini Ratna. The Mini Ratna status is granted to those PSUs that are recognized for their good performance and financial stability, but they are lower or below the Navratna level. They have a lower level of autonomy in their operations as compared to Navratna companies, with more oversight from the government. An example of a Mini Ratna company is National Fertilizers Limited, known as NFL. The last kind of a company which we will discuss under the head of other companies is a variable capital company or VCC. A variable capital company is the newest form of company under the law. The concept of VCCs was introduced very recently in the Union Budget for the financial year of 2024-25. A VCC is a corporate entity which is specifically designed and tailored for investment funds. We have learned about an investment company in our previous lecture on other kinds of companies. A VCC offers limited liability and is an alternative to traditional structures like companies and limited partnerships. A VCC is designed to allow easy issuance of fresh shares without requiring regulatory filings and shareholder approvals. Now, generally for various regular companies, you require such kind of regulatory compliances and shareholder approvals, but not for a VCC. And as such, the VCC offers a flexible approach in the investment fund sector, leading to efficiency in terms of distributions, redemptions, and repatriation of profits. In India, the legal structure of VCCs is not provided under the Companies Act, but it is proposed to be recognized under a different legislation, namely the International Financial Services Centers Authority IFSCA Act 2019. The regulatory framework of VCC is still very fluid and in a nascent and developing stage. Now, some other jurisdictions like Singapore, Mauritius, and the UAE already have VCC frameworks in place. These countries have utilized VCCs to establish themselves as appealing destinations for capital pooling and international investment. With this, we now come to the summary of all kinds of companies that we have discussed under this topic. So we began with an introduction to the various classification of companies, wherein we discussed the 9 heads of classification. So all the kinds of companies that we have discussed over the series of multiple lectures on this topic, they fall under one of the heads of classification that was outlined in the first lecture. The first mode of classification was mode of incorporation, meaning thereby how a company is born or comes into existence. Under that classification, we had 3 kinds of companies, namely a chartered company, statutory company, and a registered company. Then on the basis of liability, we have 4 kinds of companies, namely a company limited by shares, company limited by guarantee, company limited by guarantee with share capital, and unlimited company. Then we moved on to ownership as a classification of companies, wherein we discussed about a government company and a non-government company. On the basis of nationality, we discussed about a foreign company and an Indian company. On the basis of control, we had a holding company, subsidiary company, and an associate company. On the basis of access to capital and listing on the stock exchange, we have a listed company and an unlisted company. Then on the basis of number of members, we have public company, which are largest in terms of its members, private company, and a one-person company. Then on the basis of size of its share capital or turnover, we have a small company and companies other than small companies. And then lastly, we have a residuary head of other companies. In this category, we included those companies which do not fall under any of the preceding 8 heads. Under this head, we have a company with charitable objects or a Section 8 company, a dormant or an inactive company, an investment company, producer company, Nidhi companies, Ratna companies, and lastly, a variable capital company. So with this, we conclude our summarization of the various kinds of companies that could be formed under the law. The various kinds of companies that we have discussed, they add to our discussion to the various kinds of business organizations that could be contemplated and set up by entrepreneurs or business persons. So if they want to choose company as an entity to do their business, they could choose a company from the various kinds of companies that we have discussed in a series of lectures, depending upon their features, characteristics, nature, flexibility, ease of compliances, their potential to raise capital. It depends upon what is the size of the business, what is the nature of the business. And so, accordingly, a business entity from within these companies have to be chosen. Now, from amongst the various companies that we have discussed, and as I've also mentioned during the course of those lectures, that there have been some companies which are very new under the Companies Act 2013. So the newly formed companies under the Companies Act 2013 I have listed here for your benefit. They are associate companies which are classified under the head of control. Then we have a one-person company that is classified under the head of number of members. Then we have an investment company that is classified under the head of other companies. Then we have a small company that is classified under the head of size. And lastly, we have a dormant company that is classified again under the head of other companies. Now, the variable capital company I have not included here is because the legal framework of a VCC is not strictly provided under the Companies Act 2013, although there will be some aspects of a VCC that would be influenced by the Companies Act. So with this, we close our discussion on the kinds of companies. Thank you very much.